Welcome, everyone. For those that are here, my name is Kevin Barney from NBYLL. Oh, and here comes Marty Bose joining us in just 1 second. There he is.
Here I am.
Good morning, Marty.
What's up, KB?
All right. All right. I see a lot of people joining us now.
Switch Wi-Fi, sorry. Should be good to go now.
Marty, the only thing I got to figure out is how I get myself up. Well, you're going to take over the screen, right?
Yeah. So I'll do the screen share, and then pretty much I'll just talk through my presentation, and I'll, have my screen as is right now. I think, right after the intro, but I'll just sort of talk through my slides. It's a lot of it is, in the theme of program design, but I think they're going to like it. I'm approaching this like it's daytime TV for coaches.
Yeah. Well, I see people joining on. So we'll get started in just 1 minute. For those already on, there is a Q&A down at the bottom if you move your cursor around. That's probably the best way to ask any questions during it. There's a chat feature as well, but the Q&A pops up a little bit more, notifying Marty and myself of any questions you might have, specifically to what he's talking about.
Morning, Jordan. How you doing, man?
And I think KB, for anyone who's listening right now too, I'd like to be pretty responsive to that. Like the way that I set this presentation up, it's okay if people have a question at the end about something from the beginning, but I think it will be more beneficial for everybody if we sort of make it a discussion along the way. So just for those who have questions, don't be shy to ask it right when it pops into your head.
Times like these really highlight the need for better optics. So the right decisions.
All right. Well, why don't we get started here? Again, we'll just do quick intros for everyone. Again, obviously you can see our names up here, but my name is Kevin Barney. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing for NBYLL. I'm the one you're getting all the wonderful emails from this week and next, but was, in a way excited during this crazy time when reached out to a couple of our partners talking about, hey, we didn't get to go through all of our coach education and training. What else can we do? And we had a great response across the board from people who said, how can I help? So we decided to put together this webinar series. We have, I think it's 14 this week, and we'll look to schedule even some more the following week, and we'll see how it goes moving forward from there. But kicking this first one off is Martin Bose. Just the quick little background on Marty, and I'll let him fill in the rest. But Marty's a Quincy native and played lacrosse at the University of Hartford. He was drafted by the Boston Cannons in 2012 by a brilliant GM at the time. It's me. But no, Marty played in the MLL for the Cannons and Florida Launch for 7 seasons. Is that what I got, Marty?
8, 7. What? Who's
7,
counting?
8. All right. And Marty now works at Compete Indoor Sports and running all the lacrosse programs over there in Norwood. He works with a lot of teams, individuals. He does small group training, all the way up to team at the youth, high school, and even some college players as well. And Marty's been helping out a lot with our coach education. He's been one of our trainers for our certification clinics and really helping NBYLL develop a lot of our programming for educating coaches. So I will turn it over to Marty and let him take it from here.
Thanks, KB. From the looks of it, it looks like is that your bed frame back behind you? I don't know. I wonder what the percentages of people watching this from.
My wife is on a work call right now. She took over my office. My kids are downstairs, like everyone. Yeah. Had to find a quiet spot.
So let me just see what happens if I share my desktop. All right. Are we? Can you see that, KB? Can you see what I'm looking at here? All right. So for those that maybe joined, right as KB started, I'm going to go through this presentation that I put together specifically for today. I'm kind of approaching this like a daytime TV show. You know, I got the 10 a.m. slot, and I want to try to add as much value to you guys as I can in this weird scenario. But I think there's a lot we can be focusing on as coaches, and hopefully some of this stuff you guys can impart to either your children that are maybe watching, but maybe on your team, or whomever the other, you know, people that you have influence over might be able to benefit from some of this stuff. So I'm just going to hop right into it. So I have sorry, I'm just going to start the actual presentation. There we go. Okay, so as KB mentioned, I have a business called Compete Lacrosse Academy. My brick and mortar is in Norwood, and now it's on the internet because of pretty obvious reasons. But I have been working pretty tirelessly this past weekend leading up to this week to prep some online programs. But really what I'm most excited about in the short term are these interactions on Zoom through the MBYLL. So we'll see how this goes, but I'm really excited. This is, I just wanted to give a little bit of my history, which KB already did. Playing in the MLL for 8 years now. Been running this Compete Lacrosse Academy business for 3.5 years now. And it's developed in a number of different ways. And what's been interesting for me is as I've gotten better as a player through my professional career, that has translated really well to my coaching. So as I've learned new skills, learned new sports psychology concepts, learned new ways to take care of my body, I've been simultaneously turning all that information around to my entire client base, which in a lot of cases, as KB mentioned, is a wide range of ages, both boys and girls, a wide range of different ambitions, you know, different personalities, things like that. So it's been really interesting to, you know, go through this process, feeling like I'm, you know, a part of a bigger mission here. So let's get right into it. So KB, just a question for you real quick. Can you see myself speaking, or is it just my screen? Or for those that are on the Q&A.
I can see you speaking as well. For everyone watching, there are different ways to move the speakers, panelists around. You can play around with that to get the best view for you.
Okay, cool. So I thought this was a really relevant place to start. This is something that is really important to me as a person, which is, you know, only worrying about what you can control. And this is, I put a quote here, as every coach ever, everybody talks about this. But what I think is not totally understood is how do we approach all these things that we can control that we're not sure about yet. And a big part of this is speaking from the athlete's perspective. But as the coach, we want to understand how to open up this conversation to shed light on the things that our athletes can be controlling that they're just unaware of at this current moment. In some cases, they know categories that are important, but they don't know necessarily how to dive deeper into that and where to look for the best information. So the goal here is really to empower them, you know, to learn about these different categories that they could be working on, and hopefully provide resources, which I'll do my best to provide some of those resources today. So like I said, you know, we're trying to shed light. And then a big thing, you know, for us to think about as coaches, you know, from a prioritizing standpoint is, you know, when we show up to the field or when we send out that email, or in this case, you know, mostly emails, you know, what are we deeming as the most important things to focus on, and how's the process for us to come to that conclusion, right? I think that there is a lot that we could be doing as coaches to reprioritize things based on, you know, the group that we're specifically working with. So this first concept, the growth versus fixed mindset, you know, I think this is also really relevant right now. The fixed mindset athletes, you know, the athletes that, you know, essentially are saying, you know, with a fixed mind state, what they're saying is, this is my game. This is what I'm good at. This is what I'm bad at. Take it or leave it. Right. They must be very frustrated right now, right? They're not able to show their stuff, right? They're victims of circumstance right now, right? And if we take the approach as coaches to try to change their perspective, to be a growth mindset, we can then turn that frustration into excitement, into action. Because the growth mindset athletes, some people are in that state innately. Some people need to be sort of, guided in that direction, but they should be really excited. There's all this time now they have on their hands to focus inward, right? And focus on the things they could be doing to give themselves the best chance of success once they re-enter the practice and try out and game arena. So really, really cool opportunity, I think, at the core of this. Oh, sorry about that. At the core of this is an opportunity more than anything. And so I think we can change our athletes' perspectives of the situation at hand, but also in general. So when we think about these categories for where we could be developing, I think these top ones here, KB, can you see my mouse? It's kind of like okay. So these top categories here, I think are widely understood as important, right? Developing your skill, your IQ, the ability to make decisions, your attitude and effort, the strength and speed and nutrition. I think these are understood, but I think that touches upon where I started here, which is how do you really learn more about these things, right? We all take to YouTube and other resources that are readily available for us, but who do we trust, right? And things like that. And I can only speak from personal experience, but these categories, of course, are huge in my ability to be more effective as my career went on as a player and more effective as a coach as well. And then these categories down here, I think, are commonly overlooked, at least in my experience. So, the myofascial release, essentially foam rolling, different ways to foam roll, flexibility, breath work. This one is massive. I had no idea about this. We all just kind of breathe, right? It's innate, but there is so much that goes into these different breathing strategies that we can use to enhance performance as an athlete, as a coach, as a person, our immune system, things like that, which is relevant. But I'm not sitting here to tell you I'm an expert on this stuff, but I've certainly dove into different strategies, from the experts to try to better myself, so I can speak on that. And then lastly here, this emotional intelligence, sports psychology. I don't necessarily think that this is I think it's just underutilized. I don't think people necessarily think it's not important, but I think it's something that we could be spending more time on. So I'll try to shed light on that as far as one of my favorite resources in that regard. So jumping into the skill and IQ development, just as an overarching principle, there's an interesting dynamic at play with a lot of the athletes, especially in youth, I think, where these kids feel like they need to decide what position they are. And it's just not true. You talk to anyone who's played consistently over the years, they change positions. Sometimes they change positions multiple times in 1 year, never mind throughout their career. And regardless of what position they're playing, for that particular team, that particular coach, there's the certain foundational skill sets that they need as a lacrosse player. It can be that simple. And so these resources I have written out here, obviously selfishly I put myself, but First Class Lacrosse, for anyone who's in the social media game, Deemer Class is putting out some fantastic content to both build IQ and skill development. And then JM3 Sports, I put up here because I think he's doing some quality work. Jamie Monroe, he's got some webinars out that are very, very helpful for those that want to take deep dives into sort of, X's and O's stuff, but also philosophy and ways you can, utilize team concepts to take advantage of a defense and things like that. So, vague here on the skill development section, but I think that's something I'll go deeper into in a later webinar this week, but obviously noteworthy. And then put here, this is literally the template for the wall ball program that I'll be launching either later today or tomorrow, that I'll be putting out for my clientele and the general public as well. But I thought it would be a nice little value add. So, I titled this presentation about at home program design, and that is the exact intent behind this this format here. So I know it's maybe a little bit tough to read some of the smaller print there, but this is just an image that I screenshotted here to add to this presentation. If you would like this particular document sent to you, follow up with me after. I'm happy to send this out. This is for the community, and where I'll be adding extra coaching value to this wall ball program is going to be in the content that I create around this program, where athletes will have access to abbreviated coaching videos, aka a quick hit of how to do this routine, and then also longer form coaching videos going over the nuances, right? The keys to success, the common mistakes, things like that. So I thought that might be valuable for some of you that are interested in the at-home program. So attitude and effort, kind of back to these categories. Again, this is in that broader category of, coaches talk about this a lot already. So just a quick story here. When I was in high school, my father used to film all of my games, which I'm so grateful for. It's such an interesting and helpful part of my development. What I didn't realize, I was always looking forward to watching my goals, right? Like watching the plays I made, feeling like, I want to watch when I, beat that defender or whatever. But what I didn't realize is the profound impact that seeing my mistakes had on me as a person. I'd catch myself being lazy. I'd see an opportunity to help out a teammate, or get excited for a teammate that I didn't capitalize enough on, in my own opinion. And when I would look at these scenarios from the third party perspective of watching myself, it really, really had that profound impact on me to focus more on my body language. And it's something that, as a coach, there's all these dynamics at play that we have to be in tune with, whether it's our communication to our team, how our team's acting on the sidelines, how they communicate with each other, how our parents are acting on the opposite sideline, things like that. And it's just something that we want to always have in the conversation, right? And I have just this little quote here down at the bottom: to be a great leader, we first must learn how to be a great teammate. And that's the foundation of a great leader, is someone who knows what their team needs, and puts themselves as someone who can help the greater good. So obviously an important category to learn here as both a coach and for our athletes. So here's this all-encompassing category here: strength and conditioning. Essentially, I tied in the nutrition piece to this because I got a little note here about you, KB. So I'll start with the story here. In 2012, like KB mentioned, I was drafted. I vividly remember you calling me. I was on campus at University of Hartford, and I thought it was so cool. I was just beside myself, right? It was my chance to make it in the pros. Little did I know how hard it was going to be just to get a crack at the game day roster. But really, for me, what it was raising my level of confidence. And how did I do that was through these categories that we're looking at right now. Getting myself athletically to a point where I felt like, I deserve to be here. This is something that I've worked for, but that doesn't mean I deserve it because I've worked for it. I deserve it because I truly believe that I can do it. And sort of that mentality going into training camp, like on the second time around and the third time around, really was changed because of that belief in myself. And for me personally, what that belief was stemmed from was the strength and conditioning and the training and the eating that I was doing with great intent and purpose. So I just put this slide up here because it had such a profound impact on me. And I put this resource here, Compete Strength and Conditioning, my obviously multifaceted relationship with Joe Drain, as I have written here, has really helped me. So for those that are looking for a resource in that regard, he's put himself out there as a resource on social media. So if you just Google that, you'll find his contact information. So that's that. The other, just finishing touch here on this nutrition piece, I think what I really wanted to note on the nutrition was nutrient timing. I think there's so many different resources out there, great resources that teach you about what foods are good and bad to eat. But what I didn't understand until I started really focusing on it is nutrient timing. So for those, out there that are just looking to be healthy versus those out there that are looking to, maximize their playing career, nutrient timing is going to be a key to that. So just an added focus point. And then I think a one-off of that whole category, and I learned a lot of this stuff from Compete, strength and conditioning, are these deep stretching and myofascial release things. And I think this is maybe one of the most relevant things that we could be doing right now in these times of, seclusion and uncertainty, we'll say, where there's this process at play here that, all these kids, just as an example, they want a more powerful shot. But power as a blanket statement is sort of the end goal, right? When we're talking about what we're trying to do, run faster. A lot of times it's prioritizing injury prevention. That's why we train. But a lot of times, we want to get bigger, faster, stronger. We want our kids to be safe, right? Prioritizing that power from a safety perspective is huge. But understanding that to get power in a safe way, this sort of process is a huge piece to this. So I have this as sort of reverse engineering, right? The arrows are pointing to the left because it all starts here over to the right with flexibility. Really what this should be is a pyramid. Powers on top, then strength underneath, then stability, and then flexibility. And so just to summarize this concept, the power that we're generating is based off of the strength that we have within those muscle groups. But this is all predicated upon the range of motion that our body is able to produce. So as a simple example, let's say a body weight squat, right? So if we're going to do a body weight squat, do we actually have the range of motion to use that full muscle group? Like, are we going down as low as we can without our technique being compromised? And then from that range of motion training, stretching is going to help with that, right? From that range of motion training, then we move to stability, right? If I were to move to the bottom part of that, right? If I were to just go into a squat and hold it, how stable am I, right? If you were to push me, am I easily falling over? Am I balanced? Are the right muscle groups being turned on and stable? Once I have that, then I start adding weight, right? And build my strength within that muscle group. Let's say I, hold a 20-pound dumbbell while I do my squat. And then I'm going to focus on power. Once all of these things are in line, then I hold that same 20-pound weight and I go down and I jump as high as I can. I'm very, very explosive, right? That now I'm building my fast twitch muscle fibers, which will improve my power. So I just think it's important to note this process, because every kid is like, how do I get a faster shot? And, telling him to start stretching more isn't what he wants to hear, but it's the truth. And then I have these resources here. Foam roller, obvious. Lacrosse ball, you see more and more, rolling out with a lacrosse ball. And then there's this product here, this Pso-rite, is a product that I've been using for a while now, and it's the best tool I've ever used. So for someone who's interested in really diving deep into this, which I would prioritize, this is a fantastic product. All right, moving on here, goal setting. I put this as a point of development, because how we set our goals is something that needs to be learned. It's not as cut and dry as this is what I want and that's my goal setting process. There needs to be some context added here. And so I put the word polarities because I think it's very relevant. You think about the polarity between an individual and a team, right? A goal setting for an individual is going to be different for the goal setting of that individual for the team, for the season. And then, a similar polarity that's at play here would be, confidence versus selflessness. It's not one or the other. We want to pull from both. We want to get to that high level of confidence, but we also want to be humble and selfless and try to help others along that process. So just a category I think that's really, really worth mentioning here. I'm not an expert on this stuff. I didn't put this as a resource, but the resource that I really learned more about this from is Dr. John Yeager, who does Yeager Leadership, who actually was a part of the team a couple of years back with the Cannons. So really, really helpful information that he has to offer on this topic. And then as I wrote here in the note was prioritizing flow state as one of the ultimate goals. As an athlete, this is huge. As a coach, I think this is an interesting thing to work towards. Flow state is going to mean something different for that individual than it is for the team. And then the definition of flow state, it's also called white moments. It's also called in the zone. There's lots of different, literature out there that talks about this phenomenon that is flow state. But I think it's one of those things that as an athlete, or as a coach that works with athletes, asking, what are you looking to accomplish? And a lot of times I want to score X amount of goals per game, or I want to get X amount of goals this season, or I want to start, or I want to be all whatever. I want to go play high school lacrosse one day. I want to play college lacrosse one day, maybe pro, and those are goals. Those are fantastic goals. They are qualitative and visionary goals. And where I think a lot of athletes struggle is they focus on those visionary goals while they play, right? And they try to get that goal. And then when they don't, they are subject to very, very poor self-talk, right? They try to score a goal, they get stuffed, and all of a sudden that self-talk in their head starts to say, man, you stink today. You don't have it. You can't, you're not, today's not your day. You can't score. Where, if we can change that self-talk to be more predicated upon what we actually have control over, which would be taking a good shot, right? So that same scenario happens, and that kid receives a pass, and he goes and he takes a good shot and he gets stuffed. Same result, but I think it's a lot easier for that athlete to not get into that negative self-talk loop, right? Okay, I got that good shot. Hats off to you, goalie, for stuffing me, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop trying. Where that athlete that was after the results-based goal that got stuffed is that could turn into a bad day. That could turn into a bad week, a bad season, because all of a sudden they're only going after the result, which they ultimately don't have control over, which makes it very, very challenging to stay positive and to stay confident. So this one's huge, because if we can access, the self-awareness of our players as the coach, and change the cadence of our coaching so that these kids are improving their own self-talk, we can start to build some real momentum. All right. So prioritizing that flow state of playing in a state at which you are trusting your instincts. You're in the moment. You're not anxious about what's going to happen. You're not frustrated about what happened earlier. You're staying in the moment. Much easier said than done, but I think even just bringing it up to these kids makes them think, and that can be helpful in and of itself. So as I mentioned earlier here, I think this is actually a nice segue. What are the best ways for me to get into a in the moment state of mind is to focus on the breath. And that's what a lot of the professionals will talk about when it comes to, say, like yoga or mindfulness and things like that. Like, a lot of it is stemmed from breathwork techniques. And as I wrote here, I really had my eyes closed to this, until recently. I've done well for my playing career, right? I played all these years in the professional ranks. I worked my way up, started as a strictly defensive midfielder, improved my skill set to get to a two-way midfielder position, and even in some cases an offensive midfielder position. But what I didn't realize is I was breathing inefficiently the entire time. I really just was unaware of this whole category, this whole world. So I just wanted to put this in here because it's had an incredibly profound impact on me from an emotional side of things. For those that maybe know my story as of late, I've stepped away from playing because of head injuries. And a big part of my symptoms were anxiety and depression, these things that I didn't necessarily experience a lot growing up, which I'm super thankful for. But I've had these deep bouts of them in the last couple of years because of multiple concussions. And so learning about breath work was incredibly profound for me, as I said, because I was able to really turn the corner on that side of things when I started focusing on these breathwork techniques. But as I've turned it around to be more of a functional tool for my clientele as a coach, I'm seeing these really, really interesting results where my athletes are starting to have more presence, have more peace of mind, have more composure, and have the ability to take in more information because they're not out of breath all the time, and they're not putting themselves in a state of mind that can actually cause the anxiety in the first place, right? Sometimes we're anxious because of our breath being out of whack. So the two main resources here would be the Oxygen Advantage. So that's by Patrick McKeon. He's got a book. He's got tons of courses. He's got an incredible amount of free information online. So highly suggest looking up some of this stuff. And this would be like more of the holistic, correct breathing. Whereas and this is also going to help for athlete performance, right? And then whereas the Wim Hof method is in some regards contradictory to the Oxygen Advantage, but they play off of each other. But this is the one that can literally boost immune system. So for those that are interested in checking that out, he's got a ton of information that he just put up that's relevant to the coronavirus and things like that, and how his techniques can help. So that's that. So near the completion of sort of these categories here. So we've got the sports psychology and emotional intelligence. Some of this stuff we've already talked about. I wish I prioritized it sooner. I started reading sports psychology literature later in my college careers and started taking it a little bit more seriously into my pro career as I wanted to be more effective. And I saw that as a huge category for me to improve on. My athleticism was in a pretty good spot. My skill was getting to a good spot. I was learning a lot about the game, but I was getting in my own head, right? And I think that's the case for a lot of athletes and coaches and people in general is we tend to be our biggest critic and our own worst enemy sometimes. So just using this as a tool to give our athletes, our clients, and our people to hopefully take it upon themselves. I don't want to push this on anyone as, hey, go do this, but if it's something you're interested in, and I can speak on the fact that it's been incredibly helpful for me. So, learning about myself and applying what I've learned, applying the techniques from books like this, The Mind Gym, applying those techniques to myself based on what I've learned about myself, right? Which seems, in a way selfish, but to the core of this, this is all comes back to the leadership piece where if you're not able to help yourself, how are you going to help others, right? And I think this is a big piece that we as coaches can impart, but hopefully embody so that they take after it, right? If we're focusing on getting better as a coach, the athletes will feed off that. And if we're simply setting expectations and this is what I expect, and we're not actually focusing on getting better ourselves, the athletes pick up on that, right? They know what's going on. They sniff out bullshit pretty quickly. So that's a huge component here. This book is not hard. It's not a hard book to read, but it can be time consuming because it really does make you think. So that's that. And then my last value add here, what I've been putting together coaching notes that define my core pillars as a coach. So as I sort of work with either individuals or small groups, I see all these patterns, right? These patterns of coaching cues that I'm, repeating over and over or coming at from different angles because I'm seeing results from athletes that are focusing on these things, that they're finding benefit from it. So this first one is important, and we've already touched on it. Is the intense anxiety that some of our athletes feel. And if we don't think about that, it's so easy for us to get frustrated as coaches. Man, like this kid just doesn't listen to me. I've told him 3, 4, 5 times, like he's just not listening or she's not listening. And in some cases, they're just so nervous. They're so worried about making a mistake that they're incapable of hearing what we're saying, right? And so we need to change our language and our cadence, to become more in tune with this, right? And I think one of the big things that is a theme here is it's not just about they're scared of making a mistake. It is that they are scared of making a mistake in front of their peers, right? They're worried about, not necessarily right now, but in general, they're worried about going to the lunchroom, the next day with their friends, after having made that big mistake. They make this is a big deal for these kids. So I think we need to keep this in mind as coaches to try to, ease that anxiety and make it okay to make mistakes, and at least open up that conversation. Right. And so that's a segue into that second bullet point here, to try to find ways to see the win in a mistake. One thing that's been really beneficial for me as a coach is, especially in like the small group environment, this is a little bit tougher to get across to a larger group, but it's important nonetheless, which is getting excited for the athlete when they make a mistake, because it actually can be really, really exciting and exhilarating to know what mistake you actually made, right? To go in there hoping you're doing it well, and then this is the athlete's perspective, and then hearing from the coach, hey, you got to do that differently, right? Whereas there's a degree of separation before that athlete's going to be able to do it the right way. They need to know what the point of adjustment is in the first place, right? So if we bring their attention to what the mistake is, and get excited for them, like, hey, I want you to feel this, right? And one of the things I've tried is, hey, did you feel in this case, from a skill perspective, did you feel your left elbow on that last rep? And they'll look at me and be like, no. So why would I say, hey, change your left elbow if they don't even know where it was on the last rep? So that's my attempt at, closing the gap of that degree of separation is, okay, that's fine, right? What I'll say to that athlete is that's fine. On this next rep, do the same thing you just did, right? Don't change a dang thing, but focus on what your left elbow does, right? Then he'll do the same thing, or she'll do the same thing. And then I say, hey, did you feel your left elbow? And now they're in tune with it. Yes. So now on the next rep, I want you to make this adjustment, right? And so finding that win in the mistake is the silver lining, because it allows them to embed their attention on for that particular moment, what's most important to adjust. And then lastly here is just this concept of having the next play mentality. A simple drill that I do a lot of times with goalies, but I'll do it with everyone. It's just a hand-eye coordination drill. I'll have an athlete in front of me. I'll have a deck of cards in my hand, and I'll just start chucking cards at these kids, and they're trying to snipe it out of the air with their fingers. As you can imagine, they're not catching very many of those, but it's a simple example of the next play mentality. Is you can almost expect to mess up a lot, right? Where as soon as you make that attempt, whether you caught it or not, guess what? The next one's coming, right? Next play mentality. So, this quote that can help with that is, never say I can't. I'll always say I'll try, right? I'm always going to try. Right? Saying I can't catch these. All right, that's okay. But I'm just asking you to try, right? And that can stem into the next play mentality. That can stem into confidence. That can stem into a lot of the other things that we mentioned here. And so, giving that attempt in and of itself, putting that on the pedestal as opposed to the success of doing it correctly, I think is a huge win from a coach's perspective. Because now if you get a group of athletes that are excited to try new things, you could be onto something really, really special with that particular group. All right. And that's all I have for today, guys. So, I'm not sure if I have, we didn't really have many Q&As, and that's fine. But if we do have questions that you have now, like now would be the time to reach out about anything. But, I'm here as a resource for you guys. This is my email address. If any of what we talked about is something that you'd like to learn more about or pick my brain about, please reach out. Hopefully this is something that benefited you guys and we could do more of. So that's all I got, KB.
Marty, what your plans for the rest of the week? Some of the other topics you're going to cover?
Sure. So I have,
Not to put you on the spot.
no, that's fine. So I've got, on Thursday, I've got two-man games. So that'll be more of like a whiteboard chalk talk type thing where we'll talk about the nuances of the two-man game. A lot of that is stemmed from box lacrosse, but they apply to the field game. And I'll go over sort of how we can utilize that within the 6-on-6 set. On Friday, what I'll be doing is going over in depth some of the advanced wall ball stuff that I teach. So for those that are interested in taking a deeper dive into that, that'll be my focus on Friday. And then I'll have to go back to our email chain, KB, to be honest with you, to look at what I'm going over tomorrow. So
You got a question there in the chat. I don't know if you can see that.
let's see, I can pull this up.
Just asking about what recommendations for players while they're at home right now.
Sure. So what I would do is, you know, because I know that was like the big theme of this, and essentially what I covered was the categories. How do I get back to just being here? That's all right. So, you know, what we just went over was the categories of what they could be doing at home, but we didn't necessarily, you know, get in depth about like an exact routine they could be doing. You know, to be honest with you, I would prioritize this, which isn't the most fun. Like I said, it's not the most fun thing, which is the deep stretching and the myofascial release stuff. If what I would say is for that person that asked that question, and for people that are wondering the same thing, I'd like to be able to send you guys like specific workouts. So what I have in my inbox right now is I have an at-home workout routine that my business partner Joe Drain, Compete Strength and Conditioning, had provided me for this particular talk, so that if this is something that people want, I can just send that direct to you, and that would be like body weight exercises that you could be doing on a drill by drill, rep by rep basis. You know, I think for me to send you that information would be the easiest way. And what I would say is, you know, if you go on any social media right now, there's a lot of people that are offering at-home free workouts right now, and they're all pretty legit. Like you know, if it's just a basic thing that what should my kid be doing, go on Instagram, pick a workout, and start doing something. You know what I mean? I posted a video the other day of drills you could do on your couch. You know, I'm trying to get creative. And the other thing would be this, right? So this is my version of an in-depth at-home workout within the practice environment of wall ball. So if you are interested in this being sent directly to you, I'm happy to send this PDF along as well.
We shared one on our MBYL Twitter and Facebook account from you mentioned him earlier, Deemer class put together. He has 20 videos of some kind of backyard practice drills and skills that youth players can work on. So if you go on Find the Mass Bay Youth Lacrosse League Facebook or Twitter account, we shared that as well, the way you can access his videos. So definitely
Deemer does a really, really good job. He does a really, really good job. He's got, like KB said, a plethora of different types of drills, but I would highly suggest using him as a resource. And he's very consistent about posting on multiple platforms. So if you're looking up First Class Lacrosse, that is the resource there.
Great. And we're going to be doing, obviously, all of you got the email with, you know, the information on this webinar, but we have two more today. Joe Nardella, Face Off Factory, and also professional players going to be doing a Face Off webinar later this afternoon, I believe at 1 o'clock. And then Mitch Belisle is going to be doing a defensive one this evening at 8:30. So, and yeah, Brian, just seeing your note there. We're recording all these. It's our first time using Zoom and the technology with it. So it's showing it's recording up in the top of my screen. So we hope to capture all these and we'll put them online, probably on our YouTube channel, and share those links out to all of our coaches. So if you can't make any of these, please check that out. And I'll be sending an updated schedule probably a little bit later in the week for the ones at the end of the week and weekend, and then into next week as we continue these. If there's any particular interest topics, reply to that email. That goes right to me, and we'll look to see what we can do.
Yeah, just an added closing remark here. I see Jace over here, U13 player. He enjoyed this, but he's saying it's way better than school. And then right underneath here, we've got from Kev, make sure you're keeping up with your schoolwork. I think obviously that's very relevant for what's going on right now. And this is an opportunity for, whether you're a coach listening in or you're a 12-year-old listening in, this is an opportunity for you to reprioritize, right? Answer those hard questions. Why? I have up top here, Bree. I know I gave you a vague answer to what you should be doing at home other than the wall ball routine. But, what I would want you to answer for yourself, especially for you, Jace, is why do you want to be getting better, right? What is it that you're out to accomplish? And, why is playing, being back on that field important to you? And when you're able to answer those questions honestly, it gives you that deeper sense of purpose and deeper sense of, in a lot of cases, motivation to get, and take action, right? There's no reason to deprioritize schoolwork right now, right? I'm in a house right now with a teacher, and it's really, really inspiring to see the work that they're doing to make sure that their students are staying engaged, and they're getting fantastic results. Like, it's really interesting. One of the things that might come from all of this is like, there's going to be no more snow days, right? Like, teachers are going to be able to teach you regardless of being in school or not. And, take this opportunity to reprioritize and ask yourself those tough questions of why you want to be doing what you're doing, and why is it important to you? And hopefully that can be a springboard of motivation and action.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for attending. Welcome to any feedback or questions you might have. And Marty, thank you very much for your time, and we'll be seeing you tomorrow.
Thanks for having me, KB. Thanks for everyone who watched and those who might be watching this recording. Hope this was helpful, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Jace.
All right. Thanks, everyone.